My name is Joseph Buckley, president of John Reid and Associates, and in this brief video program, I would like to give you an overall description of the Reid technique. You know, many times when people hear the term the Reid technique, they think it only applies to interrogation, when in fact, there's much more involved in the process. The Reid technique has three stages to it, what we call fact analysis, the investigative interview, and only when appropriate, the Reid 9 steps of interrogation. Fact analysis deals with looking at the case, facts, and information to try to determine the scope of interviews. Who should we be talking to? Now, in those cases where there is a victim or there's a witness, then obviously we're going to talk to them to find out what they say happened, how it happened, when it happened, etc., and very possibly develop from them a description of the offender. Based on the information that we develop from the victim or witnesses, as well as the information that we gather from an examination of the scene, for example, is there any evidence left behind that implicates a particular person? Did the way that the crime was committed indicate special knowledge, for example, a code to bypass an alarm system or a combination to the safe? All of this information allows us to focus on a group of individuals that we will interview as potential perpetrators of the issue under investigation. The interview itself, which is always our first contact with the subject, is a non-accusatory, non-confrontational interview in which the investigator plays the part of a neutral, objective fact finder. The purpose of the interview is to develop investigative information. Generally, the interview will open up by asking the subject an open-ended question that invites them to tell us their story. What happened? What were their activities during the time period in question? And then we will follow up with detailed questions to develop a complete picture as to the who, what, when, where, why of the issue under investigation. Throughout the interview process, we also ask what are called behavior-provoking questions. These are questions that we know from experience. Most truthful people answer one way, most deceptive answer the same question a very different way. So the responses they offer can give us some insights into their credibility. Once the information developed from the interview and the subsequent investigation indicate the probable involvement of this person in the commission of the act, then and only then do the 9 steps of interrogation become appropriate. The foundation for the 9 steps of interrogation is empathy, understanding, sound reasoning, and logic. It's important to understand that during this process, the interrogation process, under no circumstance should the investigator threaten the subject with physical harm or make any promises of leniency or threaten them with a more severe punishment if they don't confess. The interrogation must be conducted in accordance with the guidelines established by the courts. Once the subject decides to tell us the truth, and they give us corroborating details to substantiate the confession, then of course we'll take a recorded or written statement. So the Reid technique involves much more than just the interrogation process. It always begins with fact analysis, determining the scope of interviews, conducting the interviews, which are non-accusatory fact-gathering conversations, and only when the investigative information and investigative evidence indicates the probable involvement of a subject in committing the act would interrogation become appropriate. For more information on the Reid technique process, we encourage you to visit our website at reid.com. We have many investigator tips that detail the Reid technique in terms of the elements involved in the process, and our book, Criminal Interrogation and Confessions. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes to view this presentation.